welcome to Big Trips, Little Kids. My name is Heather Eady. I'm an accountant in my 40s and mum to 2 young children. Like pretty much everyone else in the world, I love a holiday, and I always want to make sure I get the most out of my annual leave, whether that's sitting on a beach or road tripping across America. But I know that many of my friends who previously loved to travel have found it hard to plan for and manage their trips with their children. So I wanted to share some trips that we've done, and hopefully make your holiday planning easier. I promise also to share the bad experiences so you can learn from my mistakes. Ultimately, I hope to inspire you and make travel easier for you and your family. I'd also appreciate it if you could follow and subscribe to the podcast, and please do send any honest feedback. Hi, and welcome to episode 16. I'm going to pick up here where we left off a couple of weeks ago on our epic road trip across America last summer. When I left you, we were at Hershey in Pennsylvania, and from Hershey we were heading towards Boston, which is ultimately where we were flying home from. So today's podcast is going to cover that route to Boston, telling you about where we stopped on the way and what activities we undertook. It's Hershey late afternoon after a full day of theme parking, and had 2 very tired kids having a nap in the car. And we were heading on this occasion towards Easton. We arrived in Easton early evening and went for a quick diner to get some meals, and then everyone was pretty tired, so we went straight to bed. Easton's probably not somewhere that anyone's ever heard of. It's probably not somewhere that certainly people from the UK, would consider an American road trip normally. And we mainly went there because I'd heard it was the home of Crayola crayons. And Crayola crayons for me are quite nostalgic. I loved them in my childhood. We have quite a lot of them for my kids, and more modern versions of Crayola crayons as well, those kind of twistable things. I just thought it might be quite a fun place to stop. The other great reason for choosing there was that the accommodation was quite cheap, and we managed to use some Hilton points, so we thought, well, that's great, it's a good road trip stop. The reason that Easton's famous for Crayola crayons is that's where they're historically made. You can't visit the actual real factory or anything anymore, but you can go to the Crayola Experience Centre, and that's where we went the morning that we were there. It opened at 10 a.m, we were there for rope drop, and we managed to do pretty much everything before lunchtime. You certainly could have spent longer there if you wanted to, but we knew we had to get back on the road at lunchtime, so we only had really a few hours to stop and explore it all. There was just loads there for kids to enjoy. Part of the package that you got for the entrance price, you got most of the activities included, not all of them, but pretty much most of them, so that was nice because you didn't feel like you were constantly having to shell out more money and decide what you wanted to do, make sure everyone did the same things, etc. You could just actually go and have fun. So some of the fun things that the kids got to do was to make a Crayola crayon into a moulded shape. So my kids told rings and cars that you basically melted the crayon in a fancy machine and it formed a shape. Kind of interesting to watch. Fun thing that you could draw with afterwards. You do some drip art, so you melt a crayon onto a spinning disc. Again, it's all in a kind of enclosed machine, so it's all perfectly safe. You just watch it doing it and you choose how fast you want the spinning disc to go, and that gets a pattern. You can make your own jigsaw puzzles, so you draw using Crayola crayons and pens and stuff on a bit of paper, put it through a special jigsaw machine. Quite a lot of stuff that we hadn't really seen before. None of it very difficult, so absolutely accessible for my daughter, who's 2 at the time, but still enjoyable for the 6-year-old, and not actually requiring a lot of creativity. So my children, don't really have the most creative sense in terms of drawings and stuff. So they're really happy that they could do stuff, and the drip art we've actually still got framed on both our walls. We're really pleased with what they made. They also had a water play section there, which is all about locks, and the slightly tenuous link was that that's how they used to get the material to the Crayola Factory when it started, but that was a lot of fun, and my son really liked opening and closing the locks to make the barges go up and down the canal. So it felt kind of a bit educational as well. We went around that circuit a couple of times. We actually were there midweek, so it wasn't super busy. They had some queuing kind of section set up, so I imagine that school holidays, weekends, there probably can be quite a big queue for that. But we were lucky there midweek, so we were able to go around a couple of times. Although it's not the actual factory, they do have a Crayola talk which tells you how the crayons are made. You have to go at set times for that, but they show you the process. They give you lots of fun facts. We thought it was quite good for a little sit down. My kids were actually pretty engaged. Probably because I think they were promised a free Crayola crayon at the end, and my kids will do anything for something free, and probably based on my husband. Where they just sat and watched this whole demonstration all the way through, and my son certainly picked up some facts about Crayola crayons as well, which he keeps reiterating as well every time he sees one, so that was good, and a little bit educational. The final activity that you get included was the one that we did have to queue for, and seems to be the most popular activity in the whole place. We were maybe unlucky that we were at that one at the same time as a school group, but it does seem to be very popular, and that that is to make your own personal individualised Crayola crayon. Really what this is, if we're all honest about it, is a sticker stuck on a crayon which says your name, because of course everyone wants to put their name in when they personalise it, but it could say any word you wanted, I suppose. But yeah, we all just went for our names and a little picture. You choose which colour you want, so you line up at the machine of the colour you want, type in your name, it prints you out a sticker, and they've got a special rolling machine where you put the sticker on. I mean, it's sticking a sticker on a crayon. But my kids absolutely loved it. They still got their crayons. We even made a crayon for the cat, who has obviously never used it. But yeah, it was a nice fun activity and another nice thing to take away. So we set off from there then mid-afternoon, and we were heading towards the Catskills, but decided to stop on the way to get another sticker or another stamp for our national park group. So we stopped at the Delaware National Park. Never even heard of it, but it was fine. It took us a little while to find actually, but we did manage to stop there and get a stamp for our books, also use their restrooms. So we found that, by going for a stamp at the same time as the restroom, it kind of got everyone out of the car, stretched the legs a little bit, meant everyone could do the necessary, but also the kids were kind of entertained and felt like it was another destination rather than it just being part of a road trip, which I think psychologically made it feel a bit of a faster road trip for them. We did fully use their facilities because my daughter had a bit of a naffy incident, so that was fine. And then we got ourselves out and back on the road again. The reason we chosen the Catskills was really just because it's another kind of iconic American destination. It's always on the television. I felt we hadn't really stopped at many rural locations on this trip. It felt quite city and town and busy theme park focused. So I was kind of conscious that it might be nice to do something a bit slower, rest everyone and have a bit of a break from the busy. When my husband and I used to travel as a couple without children, we'd usually do that sort of stop at the end and we'd check into kind of a luxury spa hotel and have a nice few days of just, sleeping in the sunshine. I actually think with children it is worth considering doing it midway through the trip. So we did look at doing it at the end and we couldn't find somewhere quite suitable, and then we thought actually by this point everyone's going to be quite tired and maybe having a bit of a recharge couple of days would be quite a good idea. And it did work really well. So we stayed at the inn at Shankandan, which was lovely. It was kind of a rural, traditional American looking inn. It had really great food reviews. That's always quite important to me. And we were only stopping a couple of nights, so the restaurants typically are only open at weekends. We were there kind of going into the weekend, so the Wednesday night we just ate in town, and then the Thursday night we were able to eat at the inn we were staying at, which was nice as well because it meant we were both able to have a wee glass of wine. The advantage of staying midweek is that a lot of places are considerably cheaper, so everything you've seen in the movies does seem to be true, that it's a destination where a lot of wealthy New Yorkers will go at the weekends when they're not working, and that means that midweek, although a few places were actually completely shut, but midweek does tend to be quite a lot quieter. So it was nice we were able to spend time peacefully as well as a bit more cheaply than the weekend, but also get that kind of weekend vibe on the Thursday because we were able to dine in the place as well. So that was really good fun. The first morning we were there, we were really just chilling out by the pool. They had a pickleball court, which my son was keen to try. There's some other throwing ball games, various activities. So it wasn't really my kind of relaxing morning of my dreams, but it was fun for everyone and just felt like we weren't rushing around all the time. In my kind of typical holiday organisation though, after like 3 hours of relaxing, I was like, right, I booked another activity. And this was a really bonkers activity, which I don't even know how I found on the internet, but it's called Rail Explorers. And it's basically pedal-powered kind of car things that go along old disused railway lines or rarely used railway lines. They've got a few sites across America. It was hands down my son's favourite thing that we did on the holiday, and it was completely random, but a really unique kind of family experience that was just so much fun. It's quite hard to describe what this kind of cart thing looks like, so do head over to my Instagram, which is bigtrips.littlekids. I'll post some pictures there and some video to give you a bit more of an idea about what it actually was, because I was pretty clueless, to be honest, before we went. But basically it's 4 seats kind of all facing the same way on a sort of buggy kind of thing that goes along the rail track. Each seat's got its own set of pedals and you basically all cycle together to power the vehicle along. I'm calling it a vehicle, that's maybe a bit grand, to pedal the thing forward. They do tell you that there's one seat which does all the kind of hard pedalling work, so they advise you to put your strongest cyclist there and then you strap in and off you go. I was a bit worried about my daughter doing it, so it says it's suitable from birth, and I was thinking, how can it be suitable from birth if you're on bikes? But I'm not so sure about birth, to be honest, but for her at 2, it was absolutely fine. She had a special harness that she was in. She couldn't reach the pedals, but she didn't care. Don't think she even knew the rest of us had pedals. And she was quite happy wind in her hair, sitting there as we all did the cycling to push along. We probably had to do a bit more cycling because she was just coasting, but it didn't ever feel hard anyway. Basically, you all kind of move off in a convoy, so it starts at a set time. There was a group of maybe about 20 of us, 20 different cars that is, and they tell you to leave lots of space to the car in front so that, well, I suppose firstly you can enjoy the wilderness, but also you don't crash. But we really loved flying along. I'd sort of been worried it might be dull for my daughter, but she just absolutely loved it. And it was really nice to feel like we were kind of quite rural, but we weren't absolutely abandoned. We're not big kind of hikers and walkers, so it was a way of kind of seeing the rural Catskills in a completely different way than other people did. I had been a bit concerned before we went that, maybe you could get isolated or lost or somehow trapped on your own as part of that. Again, that just can't happen because you basically move in a big organised line. Although we did encounter a bit of danger because we saw a bear in the woods, which gave us all a bit of a thrill, and also did give me a bit of a fright because I was thinking, here's my 2-year-old strapped in, and what do we do if that bear would come for us? But the bear was obviously not interested in us at all. It turned around and just went crashing back up through the woods. I guess it's the sort of thing that maybe Americans are more used to seeing. Do let me know if you kind of think, oh gosh, this is so typical for us, but coming from a country in the UK where we just don't have any predators like that, it always just kind of makes us stop and think a bit more. But it was a really brilliant experience to see that, and it's something I'd never seen in the wild, and my son saw it too, and obviously he's never seen that, so just really interesting to see. And yeah, a kind of bit of a, whoa, here we are moment. So after that, we had one more day there. As I say, we were eating in the hotel that night, and that was really nice. And then we were back on the road again. We stopped briefly to take in a slightly random sight of the world's largest kaleidoscope, which I wouldn't go out your way to see if you were in the area, but if you're happening to drive past, it's actually a nice stop that adds as well some gift shops, and really nice toilets, a few other kind of mirror things and lots of kind of similar things like that to buy, loads of kaleidoscopes to buy. But a nice little kind of 10 minutes lie down and look up at this large kaleidoscope, I suppose, but kind of almost like a meditation or something. But yeah, just another strange thing to do. We quite like to do these things, as you probably noticed by now, just as we're passing things, just to kind of see what they're like. After that, we were heading to Springfield. Now, I've been in and out of whether we stopped in Springfield or not. We had to stop somewhere, I thought, because we wanted not to be spending Boston hotel prices for as many nights as we could. It's obviously a lot more expensive to stop there, and we knew we'd be getting there fairly late at night, so we wouldn't get a chance to actually see Boston on that day, and we'd be paying for the expensive hotel for no reason. So we thought, right, we should stop somewhere else, and decided to stop in Springfield, really, because it was halfway on the map, and we just thought, well, at that point we'll just need a bit of a break. So I started researching Springfield and found it was the home of Dr. Seuss. We like the Dr. Seuss cartoons and books. We don't read them as much as some other books, but it's certainly books that we've read and the characters the kids like, so we thought, well, that's fine, we could potter there. But we thought it's probably not a full day, so we also ended up booking tickets to the Six Flags there, because we thought, well, that's another thing we could do. And actually our plan then was to really just do it as a water park. So having done all the big rides at Hershey, and I said before, my kids are not that into big rides. My husband hates big rides, so we thought, well, what we could do is just really use it as a water park, and everyone could have a good time in the lazy river. We could float around. It'd be quite a nice little break. This did not go to plan. It turned out to be a really horrible wet day. We'd already bought the tickets, so I was like, right, fine, we're going to go anyway. We went to Dr. Seuss Park in the morning, and it was good. They had a museum beside it, which in hindsight is what we should have done. We should have gone to the museum as soon as we saw the forecast was terrible. They also have the home of baseball there, so that would have also been something we could have gone to, and no doubt had lots of great stuff for kids. But oh no, we ploughed on with our original plan to go to the theme park, and it was pointless. It was absolutely pouring. It really, really pouring, like a complete downpour. All the rides ended up being shut quite quickly. We got to go on a few things, so it wasn't a complete write-off. We got to go on some of the kiddie rides, and we got to go around the Lazy River a couple of times, but it just wasn't the day that we had planned. And I think we all got a bit frustrated and annoyed with that, and it felt really like a little bit of a waste of a day. But I think most holidays end up with a duff day at some point, and when you're travelling with a family, I think everyone feels it a bit more. As a singleton, I'd have probably just gone, not going to bother going, even though I bought the tickets. But when you bought a ticket for 4 people, you're not really going to just change your mind on a whim. So you end up going, and it was fine, right? It wasn't a miserable, terrible day, but there was just kind of no point to it. I don't think any of us kind of came away with any memories. And as I started to look at it for this podcast, I was thinking, well, what could I say about it? And I don't think it's the park's fault at all. I'm sure the park is lovely on a lovely day. But really, all I can remember about it was standing waiting for gaps in the rain to run, which I suppose, was funny in itself, and is probably something the kids will remember because it's those kind of moments of panic in your parents that you often remember. But it was really wet, and we knew then we were driving as well afterwards, and we were going to be wet in the car. Oh, anyway, these things do happen, and I think the key is to maybe just, manage your own expectations on it and do some other planning. So building from that then, my top 3 tips from this part of the trip. I think firstly, don't be afraid to book crazy things, even if your kids are small. For sure, my daughter would have got a lot more from the Crayola experience and the Railroad Explorers if she was bigger. Will she remember it? Very doubtful. Will we remember her joyful face? Will she love looking back at pictures? Did we all have a better experience because we did it as a family? 100% yes. So I would say just, book these things for young kids and just accept that, it's a bit of a rip-off. But equally, I think the joy that you get from doing it as a family is probably outweighs the cost of it. And often there are discounts for under 3s and things as well. My tip number 2 is do think about how to balance your super busy and your chill out time on holiday. I am really guilty of packing stuff in and making sure that there's something to do each day. I have a spreadsheet always, and I always put on it a morning to relax or an afternoon to relax, and people look at it and they're like, oh my goodness, what sort of holiday is that you're scheduling relax time? But for me, if I don't schedule it, I'll book something every single day, which in many ways works well because, kids get bored, they want to do stuff, but you do need to remember that although they'll say they'll charge on, they won't, and that is often worse on holidays because they're actually getting so overtired. So having a bit of recharge time, particularly when you've got options that they could do sport or something that's maybe a bit more calming and less unusual for them, has worked really well for us, and to do it that way. And then thirdly, building my point from the theme park disaster, just consider foreshadowing alternative activities. So we do a lot of foreshadowing. We tell our kids where we're going in advance. We watch things on YouTube. We talk about where we're going. To be honest, I didn't like this at the beginning because I felt like that sort of ruins the surprise for them. And I like to be the person in charge of the spreadsheet going, oh, surprise, we're going here today. But it just does help them to be ready for what we're doing. And because I like to do so many different things, I suppose it is quite intense if you've not been on a holiday with me before. So I think it does help them to understand kind of what's going to happen and what things might look like. And it just seems to work better for us. I'm not sure if it would work for every kid, but for us, we found that works. The downside of that is that then if you have to change plans, it's quite difficult for them because they've got their heart set on something and you've told them it's going to go one way and then it's going another way. So I think what I would try and do next time is actually, if I think the weather is questionable somewhere, maybe foreshadow a few options and say, well, if it's going to be this sort of day, we'll go here, and if it's that sort of day, we'll go there. And of course, they'll still be disappointed if they want to do one thing more than another thing, but it will make them feel that there's options and benefits of everything, rather than saying, oh, here's something you've been building up to, but actually we're not doing that, we're going to do something totally different that you know nothing about, which understandably for any of us would feel a little bit upsetting. And in hindsight, I probably just shouldn't have even booked theme park tickets when I knew the weather could be questionable, because then I wouldn't have had the financial worry about it as well. But we all live and learn. So onwards and upwards, and in a couple of weeks when I come back to this style of episodes, I'm going to cover our final destination of this trip, which was Boston. So thanks again for listening, and as I say, do pop over to my Instagram, which is bigtrips.littlekids, and leave me any sort of feedback. And if you've done any parts of this holiday as well, I'd love to hear how you felt it went or your favourite bits as a family. So that's bigtrips.littlekids, and thanks again for listening. Trips Little Kids. My name is Heather Eady. If you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at bigtrips.littlekids, and there's plenty of pictures and information there about the trips we've taken. Artwork for this podcast is by Omar Shazad at gendesign_, found on Fiverr. Music by Audio Coffee, which can be found at www.audiocoffee.net, and it's called Happy Holiday. Thanks again for listening. Bye.